Hello, and welcome to mentorDINO. I'm your host, Caitlin Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. I firmly believe that architecture, engineering, and construction professionals can achieve true success by embracing human skills as their guiding principle. So each week, I interview amazing professionals in and around the AEC industry as a way to share stories, inspiration, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, we'd love to have you join our community. So if you like this episode, please do me a favor and hit subscribe, like, or leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own career journey. So let's dive in. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I would like to welcome Daniel Woodroffe, principal and founder of DWG in Austin, Texas. Thank you, Daniel, for taking the time to speak with me today.
It's a real pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
And so I would start out with my loaded question, if you don't mind introducing yourself to let my listeners know a little bit about your experience and journey so far in your education and career.
Well, given that potentially not many people know me and we're not sitting in a room full of people, as you can probably tell, I grew up in East Texas and have lived in Texas all my life and developed an English accent through acting school, and it's just become a great gimmick. But joking aside, grew up in England, moved from London in 1998, and to be a landscape architect with a practice in Dallas. Planned on staying for a couple of years to gain a robust experience. And I had done my degrees in Edinburgh, Scotland, had done a semester student exchange at Louisiana State University, and had established friends and connections in the United States. And the 1998 adventure was really just meant to be a couple of years. And 26 years later, I have my own practice here in Austin and have a beautiful wife, a 12-year-old son, a dog, a house, and living the dream. So it's been quite the roller coaster.
Yeah, all the things. And so what got you to stay stateside and have the practice here rather than going back or Scotland or anywhere else you traveled to?
It's always a fun one. Edinburgh, Scotland is a magnificent city. I think I would very happily retire there. Edinburgh College of Art and the School of Architecture there is really great school. Very robust in the sense of understanding not only the technical side of landscape architecture and design, but also the creative side of really pushing thesis and idea, and had a heavy emphasis on urban work. Coming to the States again was part of me wanting to expand my horizon. When I graduated, and I graduated with a dual honors degree, so it was a bachelor's and a master's in one kind of happy sandwich. There really wasn't very much work in London, and the work that was there was the pay was terrible, the expectation was exceedingly high, and there were seemingly like 1,000 resumes for every one job. And so at the time, Texas was booming. And I had a close friend of whom I went to high school with. We went to college. She was always a year ahead of me. She was working in Dallas for SWA at the time, and recommended that I came over. And from that moment of spending a couple of years in Dallas and then moving down to Austin and staying here in Austin, it really revealed if you want it, the cadence and speed of influence and impact you can have in the design realm. And our work is primarily focused on the public realm. the wonderful construct of dealing with social dynamics of people and places, but also the infrastructure of a city, from understanding utilities to understanding the sense of space and proportion and green infrastructure and sustainability, and how through the definition of landscape architecture we can really have an impact. And I think that capacity to impact, that capacity to immerse into community and be an active participant on boards and commissions, as well as being a practitioner and a leader of a firm, has really, over the last 26 years, been fascinating, exhilarating, sometimes terrifying in terms of how fast projects can go, but really has never resulted in a boring day. And I think something where, as a designer, as a designer that effectively works in a service industry where we have clients, we're asked for a product, we deliver a product, but it's based on ideas in our brains and then data and facts. It's been really, invigorating to help craft and, in some cases, reinvent the realm of our cities in small or really big scales.
Yeah, because when I was going through your portfolio website and just seeing the different scales of projects and what you've had an impact on. I know you even have a Pittsburgh project in there. So I was pleasantly surprised to see just the vast variety of work you get to touch and see in scales, because from more building architecture standpoint, I more think of like the actual building itself, but then thinking of it in the opposite, where it's almost the void for me is the outside space, and how you can sculpt that in different ways and forms to bring the community together.
Yeah, I mean, we for the longest time have kind of defined our work as playing or dealing in the urban architectural landscape, and that was, every once in a while we still get a phone call asking if we cut grass or mow lawns or trim hedges, and that can be, frustrating and funny sometimes. But it was a sense of really wanting to focus on the conversation of urban design, the conversation of interiors to exteriors, utility, infrastructure, and place. And so there has to be a dialogue between architecture and, as you just said, that kind of void. And that can be at the scale of, one parking space, a pocket park on the street, a temporal thing that's designed to kind of reinvigorate a conversation of how people use streets versus cars, to the scale of city building and planning and infrastructure on massive scales, to toxic sites that have had, hydrocarbons and benzenes and nasties, and then get to clean those up and turn them into beautiful corporate campuses that are about ecological restoration. And I think that kind of message, irrespective of scale, about standing for a series of principles about quality of life, effectively, but not just human life. Very globally, in a sense of the impact we can have of being stewards of an environment, built environment, natural environment, what is natural environment, et cetera, et cetera. But that's been fascinating. And even sometimes putting our stuff onto buildings, the conversation of green roofs and blue roofs and plazas and patios, and really understanding the technical side of the work we do as well. It's been very, very collaborative.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I'll give a little bit more of a backstory to my next question. So when I was looking to apply for architecture programs, one school said, you didn't get in, but apply to landscape architecture. And the only thing I thought of with landscape architecture is I know nothing about plants. I don't have a green thumb. I can't keep track of what things are. And so I was curious about, how did you learn about landscape architecture as a career path? And is it what you thought it would be, because when I look at your work, it's not what my perception was as a high school student being told to go do landscape architecture. And I don't know if I would have thought of it differently if, I had that different mindset.
A really good question. I'll answer it in reverse. Is it what I expected it to be? No, every day is a new adventure. I think because every project has a wicked challenge. From that kind of tank farm toxic transformation to water resources in the hill country to the scale of the pocket park. Landscape architecture, and just like architecture, is a very, very diverse conversation of tons and tons of specializations. And you can either become a jack of all trades, a generalist that is good, or you can really find your love language. Mine is, I think Eric, my business partner, always says that your love language is there is no box. Just like there is no spoon kind of moment in the famous movie, but of like, is that an acceptable answer? Why aren't we doing something more? Why haven't we reinvented this thing? There are others, Jason and Eric are much more almost kind of mathematically pragmatic of the numbers and data and metrics of understanding code and the kind of the coded language of the urban landscape. And so we have Cassie in our office, who is a master gardener, who is a horticulturalist, and she understands native plants. She has a different kind of design background. She wasn't trained originally as a landscape architect. And that's kind of allowed her to be a really evocative designer, understands scale and kind of the thread count of spaces, the composition of layers and textures. And I think all of that to a sense that even in an architectural practice, you have the project manager, the specialist, the one that's really exceptional at X, Y, and Z. And the same very much applies in landscape architecture. And I think amplified in kind of a practice that really talks about the urban realm. We've been very lucky to work with Michael van Valkenburg for well over a decade on Waller Creek, and having them teach us another scale again about urban watersheds and hydrology and the role of a fluvial geomorphologist. I just love that kind of title, and so it just kind of rolls off your tongue. Like, what the hell is this guy doing? And I think there's always a capacity for learning. And I always wanted to be either a marine biologist or an architect. And what stumped me, and I'll put my dinosaur hat on at this point, was that when I was going into university, to be an architect, you had to have advanced level math. And I didn't. It wasn't my strength. At the same time, my mother had always been a naturalist and really fascinated with botany, and she's a watercolor artist and calligrapher. And so the natural world was always something that we kind of immersed into. And so our neighbor was a landscape architect, and she said, go spend a week with him one summer. I think I was 15 years old, and I tagged him, followed him for a week in his office, went to all of his meetings, went to all of his site visits, and became absolutely obsessed with what landscape architecture could be about, really understanding the natural world and interpreting it in the built environment and defining different vernaculars of nature and infrastructure. And that has obviously morphed and evolved in the recent history of landscape architecture to be about climate resilience and green infrastructure, about stormwater management and how we make cities more livable, more humane, and decarb, et cetera, et cetera. And it continues to be fascinating. And I don't know where my career will ultimately continue going. But I do feel like it's still heading in a fun direction.
Yeah. we're always discovering what's next, and you never know what's going to come. But that's a great opportunity you had to shadow your neighbor for a whole week, because oftentimes when students come in to try to job shadow myself for a day, or we usually let them jump around to different people, because you can do so many different things in a day that if you have a whole week, you can see them hopefully on a job site or working with somebody in a meeting, but seeing what they do back in the office, how they collaborate. You get those different dynamics because so many different things happen on different days of the week, and it just is the luck of what week you picked and what you need to work on. So I think that was great that your mom was able to have you do that.
Yeah. Now, I don't think she intended me to move to the United States. I think that's still a little bit of a contentious issue between mother and son. But I wouldn't have changed it for the world in terms of the opportunities that have been put in front of me. Sure.
Yeah. And then, so jumping back into your work, do you find your work is coming from partnerships with architects, contractors that are developing a site, or are you working directly for communities and local organizations, or a mix?
It varies. We've always endeavored to have a robust kind of portfolio of client or project types. Historically, we've done more private developer work, which is inherently a relationship that is often forged over many, many years. That repeat clients are lovely, where you are inherently joined to the hip with a larger team. And as with any project, any design discipline, I mean, collaboration is the name of the game. Understanding your role, pushing and pulling, knowing when to stand up and have an opinion, knowing when to kind of lean back and support the opinions and guidance of the rest of the team. Working with really good civil engineers and even architectural teams in terms of those that really value that conversation of collaboration. The same is very much true about a contractor in terms of you have a contractor that doesn't want to collaborate, that has, I think, sadly, there'll be at least one experience in everyone's career where there is a divisive or kind of a not so fun experience with a contractor process. And then there are those, like we've just had on Springdale Green, that have been unlike anything I've ever worked on, where the spirit of collaboration, rolling up sleeves, figuring out problems, and acknowledging that it doesn't matter how good your drawings are, they're never perfect, and that there's a way to figure these things out on a site that had many unknown variables and hidden elements. I mean, I think that collaboration is great. But we do also work in the public realm as well with cities and municipalities. The Pittsburgh project you mentioned is with River Life, and they're a nonprofit organization, stewards of the Allegheny and Mon River in Pittsburgh. And they are effectively a creative facilitator that works in very close partnership with the city and the city's parks department. Not dissimilar to the Waterloo Greenway or the Peace Park Conservancy or apologies, there's a fire truck going by, Urban Life, or the Austin Parks Foundation. And I was the president of the chair of the Austin Parks Foundation for a number of years. And that kind of sense of understanding the role of the nonprofit partners and how they are really lifting up the conversation of at least public open space and things like that. It's been really interesting, but each one is very different. The contractual obligations, the communication styles in a public arena versus a private arena, it's nuanced and different. And you have to kind of understand the way contracts are written, the way that billing is done, the way services are rendered, and it just varies, and it's just another layer of the learning process.
Yeah, and different types of clients, from your perspective, clients, and what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve in their process. So And so what inspired you to start your own firm?
Um, it was always a dream of that kind of big, hairy, audacious goal of, one day we'll have our own practice. Eric Schultz in the office here, managing principal, he and I have talked for years, and there may have been one or two libations in the process of just, what would it be like if we ever did this? But there was a moment in time in late 2009, the economy was all over the place. There wasn't very much work. I think I just got to an epiphany of where I've been for the last 13 years. Maybe isn't enough or wasn't quite right. And I felt myself becoming more and more of a generalist and less of a specialist. And so saw that as an opportunity to take a leap of faith. And there were very definitely two groups of people, those that thought I was a bloody idiot and those that thought that it was a long time overdue and wished me all the luck. To kind of redefine my love language about urban design, about the urban architectural landscape, and those kind of statements like everything is subject to change, and just that sense of who we are and what we represent. And that has, of course, evolved over the last 14 and a half, nearly 15 years. But there's also some real gusto and spirit to that original statement still, even though our work has got bigger and more complicated, sometimes in other countries and parts of the world. But it's that notion of being your own, responsible for your own destiny. And there's definitely been moments where that's both liberating and terrifying. The process of paying your taxes and payroll, and suddenly realizing that there are 20 payrolls, and that equates to really big numbers every month. And what happens if a project goes on hold? I mean, there's lots of uncertainties, but there's also that sense of, oh my God, we won that project. Look what we've done. Look what we've created. Look what we've changed. Look how much impact we've actually had for thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people that interact with our work on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. And they keep changing, they keep growing, they're not static. Sometimes clients ask us to come back over and over again and change them over the course of 15 years. It's just, it's been really fun.
Yeah, I'm forgetting who gave me this quote on a prior episode, but it's, you have to choose your hard. And what you want to go after, going off on your own, isn't an easy decision. And there's challenges. Being an employee and doing other different things have their own challenges, but you kind of have to pick your heart. And sometimes you get to a point that the fear of putting yourself out there to take that leap of faith, like you said, and figure out if you're a bloody idiot or not, to, align yourself back to where you want to go and be, I think is important. And even when you talk about it, like your facial reactions, for anybody who's not watching on the YouTube channel, just how you speak about deciding to take a step into what you want to do, realizing you didn't want to do something else anymore, and figuring out that love language.
Yeah, well, the consequence of that is also, hold on a second,
panic.
I don't get a payroll anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting paid every 2 weeks as a guarantee. I don't have healthcare. These are all things that I now have to figure out. The Secretary of State and registrations. I mean, filing your taxes and doing your quarterly, this, that, and the others. And it's been a long process, and I think part of my kind of turn back the clock is, man, I wish there was a genie on my shoulder that was whispering how all of this could work. Because, man, it would have been so much easier if I really had a good roadmap. But at the same time, knock on wood, we've never been sued. We've never goofed up a project so badly. In fact, I don't think we have ever goofed up a project really badly. And we've had clients that enjoy working with us and have called us back and taken us all over the world. And then you can go to fairground down the street and just sit in a corner and watch people having a whale of a time. You can go to Waterloo Park and be at a concert with 5,000 other people and not watch the concert at all, because you're just watching how people engage in that space. The kind of the random conversations about, this place must have been here for 30 years. Look at it. And it's like, oh, sorry, it's actually been here for 5 years. And those kind of just, that's where you get that feedback mechanism of it does matter. And that hard work does pay off. Gray hairs aside. I mean, it's most of the time it's good fun.
Yeah. Do you feel you have a different lens on the design side by having that business acumen now?
Oh yeah. I think there'll always be that sense of, what if we pushed it this much further? But the inherent learned experience of what it takes to see a project built, the team effort, the resources, the collaboration, whenever we have a new member of staff, some of the most profound kind of eye-opening moments are when they shadow other individuals out on job sites. It's like, you drew that detail, this is how it's getting implemented. These are perhaps the things that had to change because it wasn't quite right. Here's the shop drawings. Why did it go from this type of steel to that, or that flange, and so on? And that's fascinating. The business acumen is, sometimes you get a little bit more cynical and you think about risk management and you think about the insurance and just the quality of, what happens if something goes wrong. You become much more aware of life safety, risks. But at the same time, and I tease people in the office about this. Like, I just want to put swings in trees. And years ago, we were told we couldn't do that because that's too dangerous. And I'm like, at what point did a swing in a tree become too dangerous? And it's like, well, it's not a park. It doesn't have a sign outside saying, for 10-year-olds only. It's like suddenly you get some big adult on it, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes it can be a little boring. But no, it's experience and the capacity to keep drawing and developing designs is, I'm now 27 years experienced in the profession. And I feel like I have a good knowledge of what I want to do and how we do it, but do not feel anywhere close to being in that kind of masterclass category. There's still a lot to learn.
Yeah. I feel like we're always going to be learning because you can't possibly know everything. So every job you takes a step to learn.
It'd be boring if you knew everything.
Yeah. And I know on your website you talk about designing at intersections, whether it be nature and culture or urban and landscape. Can you speak to the work you've done bringing together communities in those intersections? Because I feel like that's a lot of what your firm does.
I mean, I've mentioned them already. I mean, at the smaller scale, the pocket parks have been a fascinating experiment about the role of the public realm in the city and about sociology and stormwater management, to simply just how you develop retail strategies and economic resilience and walkability. Those have been really intriguing to see how they can illuminate spaces that were otherwise unseen, just by creating an object or an artful element on the street, even in a temporary sense. The art installations like Stiegler and Night Garden, where they're truly ephemeral, truly temporal. And Creepshow actually starts on Friday this week, goes for 2 weeks. But that sense of revealing space through art is fascinating. But then when you get to work on a large campus or a large park space and working for Austin Community College and doing their 2 signature parks up at the Highland ACC campus, to have that conversation with the Baptist church community, to the chancellor of the college, to the teachers, to cross sections of the community, and understanding that a park is also a place of learning. It's a place of convocation and graduation. It's a place of interpretation and communication and storytelling of history and of reconciliation of mistakes from the past and bringing a place back to be for the people again, as opposed to a mall parking lot. And all of these kind of layers upon layers of what our work represents to community and to effectively bringing people together in better, more invigorating ways.
Yeah. Have you ever been surprised by how a space is getting utilized that you designed?
I
don't know. Like an event you never thought of, or like, because whenever we design spaces, it's trying to come up with possible futures and how a client can use the space. But sometimes it's, I didn't even think about that as a possible future. And then I could, if I did exterior space and could see my work all the time, I would almost be fascinated. I'm like, okay, I didn't think of doing it that way, or how somebody operates or moves.
Yeah, there's definitely been moments. I mean, Fairground has a synthetic lawn hillside underneath a series of heritage oak trees that were existing on the site. It required very, very careful kind of engineering of understanding the roots and where they were and mapping those so that we weren't impacting the trees. And it was always imagined as an amphitheater space with a stage at the bottom, and you could have an acoustic guitar or a performance. Maybe not surprisingly, it's become the biggest urban roly-poly hill for kids, big and small kids. And that's always fun to see, the kind of the unintended consequences. Waterloo Park, and we can take only a small portion of the credit because, again, MVVA is the real architect, the lead on that project. But through our involvement, the cantilever lawn that leans out over the creek is built like a kind of a highway overpass with the double T's, and it's now home to the second largest urban bat colony and different type of interaction. But it wasn't planned for a bat colony, but the nature has kind of reclaimed it, reimagined what that space is, and it's now, it's an amazing adaptation, and more people know about that. And yes, you can go and slide down the stone slide and run around the park and see Gary Clark Jr. playing in the concert venue, but there's also these kind of hidden special moments that take a moment, pause, and explore. There was a beaver in one of the ponds, and nobody knew how this beaver got in the middle of the city, and there he is. But he's quite happy apparently. So.
Yeah. Well, if I didn't have a friend in Austin, I wouldn't know that bats were a thing in Austin. So for anybody who doesn't know, that you can see them all fly at night.
That's right. In the peak season, I think it's nearly 20 million bats coming out from the Congress Avenue Bridge. It's more like a Batman movie than it is anything else.
Yeah. But yeah, thinking of how something gets built and nature just will decide what it wants it to be sometimes.
For sure.
So, but I always ask this question when firms don't use their name. Where did DWG come from? Is that just abbreviated?
It is, but it was. It very much was purposely meant to have a dual meaning. Daniel Woodroffe Group. Thank you, parents, for that synergy. But it's also, DWG is the file name extension for a drawing in AutoCAD. We put the period on the other end, so it's DWG dot as opposed to .dwg, so Autodesk didn't come and hunt us down for having a copyright infraction. But yeah, I mean, just the dialogue about fundamentally, what do we do on a daily basis? We draw, we imagine, we create these things, and so the kind of the duality of, yes, it is a practice with a founder, and it's a quirky 3-letter word, but for those in the know, it also has a kind of a fun little tongue in cheek, but it's quite literally what we do every day.
Yeah, because that's the first thing I thought of was the drawing side. But then, I always think of acronyms or different names of the founders. And I was like, well, then where's the G come from? Because got the DW part, but
yeah, we're teeing it up for the next partner ending in G. So that's our job search.
That's a job qualification in a resume. Yeah. First or last name must start with a G. And I know the firm itself has expanded its practice out to the UK, so back out to where you came from. So what was, I guess, the decision behind expanding outside the States, and what's it like to expand a practice outside of one country?
What's it like? One hell of a roller coaster. I'm 26 years separated from working in the UK, and a lot's changed. The legality, the contracts, the relationships, and everything. London was, since the dawn of DWG, has always been, again, kind of this big, hairy, audacious goal about having, what if we ever had an Austin, London practice? I mean, wouldn't that be cool? But there was always a kind of a thought of reality of like, hold on a second. If we're going to do that, then that probably means I have to uproot here, go there, rebuild all those relationships, all that contacts, and therefore it for the longest time remained just a wonderful vision and dream to kind of measure ourselves against. And we have Mindy spends most of the year up in Pennsylvania. Nick lives in Denver. We have a whole group of people in San Antonio and have done for nearly 10 years. We don't have offices there. We've always kind of called them outposts of the pre-COVID sense of mass migration and the changing dynamic of firms to embrace life balance and then kind of creative technology to bring people together and then figure it out. So, we went through the COVID adventure, we'll call it, and a moment arose where one of my closest college friends from Edinburgh had been a landscape architect in London, had been with one firm his entire career, nearly 25 years. And he kind of got to an inflection point as well and saw that maybe he wanted to explore a different avenue, different opportunity, maybe even start a practice. And so he simply called me one day and said, I need your advice about how you started your practice. And that conversation over a couple of years just evolved into, hold on a second, why don't you just do that, but have all of the credit history, portfolio, staff resource of Austin behind you? And so today, Maren lives in London. He's the managing partner over there. Marine, who is his right hand and lead designer, is based in Valencia in Spain. And then we have Laura, who's based in Cambridge, and they've all at various points in their careers worked together. Maren and I have known each other for nearly 35 years. And the goal is to firstly stabilize London and get it humming. Each one of them have long relationships and practice much more urban planning than necessarily just landscape architecture. So it's really remarkably unique, but also different kind of style and scale and type of work. The goal is to, in time, start to share our resources of staff and practice to take on bigger and bigger projects. We're chasing some design competitions right now that, fingers crossed and knock on wood, we have an opportunity to do that. And then as we grow, kind of increasing challenge, okay, Maren, now you have a skill set, come and help in Austin, and so on. And but it's not without the reality of simply saying, it's always been a dream of me to have an opportunity to have a practice back in the motherland, and see what happens, and see if we can actually kind of leverage the experiences and just the success we've had here, and see if we can even replicate it just a small piece in London. And it looks really fun on the business card. I mean, Austin, London has a good ring to it. Austin's still considered the spirit of scrappy entrepreneurs, innovation, technology. London has a resonance of much more established, authentic, historical, 1,000-year. Of course, it's design. And so finding that kind of balance of how these things synergize and operate together will be really, really fun.
Yeah. So when did the London side start?
Oh, June 3rd.
Okay, so very, very recent.
Very recently. I mean, nearly 6 months. It's flown. And right now the plan was I'm over there about every 3 months for 3 weeks or so, and back and forth. Maren and Marine really kind of focus on building their kind of cadence of work and the settling of the phone calls and, hey, congratulations, you're a free agent, now let's work together kind of experience. But yeah, I mean, we're now, the Pittsburgh project has opened doors. We're chasing work in New York and Philadelphia next week, and just kind of running around and every day is a new adventure.
Yeah. But it's also a different approach of expanding the office, because when I hear the story, it's a lot of, if a firm wants to grow, even just in the States, either they've got to go plant somebody from their office in that city to get some legs, or they acquire a firm that's already been existent. But I love the different approach of, it was a friend that just wanted to start his own firm and do his own thing, and not think of it as an opportunity of, I could bring my expertise to another small firm to learn that growth, come in as a partner to learn the business side, have that ownership, since, he's the main one in London. So it's a lot like having your own firm over there, but then you get the collaboration across multiple people that,
and it's a unique way that I have built the firm. Started it, did not take a bank loan, did not have any investors. It was, personal savings, and keep everything super lean and grow patiently and slowly. When we can add one more person, we'll do that. We've never had the capacity, or frankly, the desire to just put one person in New York, hope that in a year's time, that person has enough relationships or gumption. We've never been especially keen on then acquiring a senior leader because they're in a place. It was very different for Maren because there was that
relationship,
long relationship. And I think we've also, we've talked long and hard about how we do grow, how I eventually grow out of the firm as well. And the conclusion we've always come to is that it's not about a merger and acquisition. It's about growing a culture of individuals in the firm and keeping that inherently in the firm. Join, grow, learn, lead, as opposed to Daniel run the business and then be faced with the prospect of, do I just close the door? Do I sell to a big A&E firm and walk away and potentially rupture the culture we've built? Or do we, try and build this from the inside out? And that's what we're trying to do. And I think the same is true of where we locate as well. We don't plan on having a Pennsylvania or Philadelphia or Scranton office. It's just right now Mindy lives there. I mean, her fiance is there, and naturally she will build this gravity around her of relationships and trust and influence in the Northeast, and it'll be exciting in its own regard. And maybe one day there is the critical mass to say, we've got people, we need a space, but it's never been space first, then people. And I know there are a lot of architectural firms that'll land in a city and rent space, and they'll have 2 people and 30 free desks, and it's a sense of we're building fast. That's just, we've done it differently, and it's worked well for us, but the 30 people, free desks, then obviously works as well. So
yeah, I think it's finding what works for you and your firm culture. So, and just finding out you've got people in all sorts of cities, even the London office having cities in different countries, on just who's where, who do you need, what's the right person for what you're doing and the right fit, and not let it be just the boundaries of Austin to meet those goals. I wanted to touch on some other local organizations that you've had a chance to work with over the years. And I know you were president for the Texas chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. Can you tell me what you're able to do over there, and potentially other organizations if people are interested in landscape architecture to get involved in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously ASLA is a national organization which has chapters in every state, every city, just like AIA. The Texas ASLA was very unique in that Austin, Houston, Gulf Coast, West Texas, each of the chapters very different, with very different literal landscapes and literal kind of dynamics of cities, from Lubbock to Houston to Austin to Dallas. I mean, utterly different environments. It's also one of the largest chapters in the country, second only to Florida. And so huge membership, hugely diverse. And my adventure with them started at the local section level. I was the chair of the Austin section. And we started a much more robust conversation around advocacy and committees about actually being more robustly involved in the community, in leadership, in politics. And that translated to the statewide level. It was a really great experience. It was one I had to unfortunately cut short because of this crazy adventure called London. But it enabled me to help craft a convention around the conversation of resilience and change, and ask some really challenging questions about climate and resilience in Texas, and what that means to individual landscape architects. And it means completely different things to many different landscape architects. But it also was an opportunity to challenge everyone to really come together and have a louder voice. ASLA, much like AIA, has rolled out over the last few years a really robust and quite brilliant series of actionable plans around climate action and resilience and social stewardship, about equity and diversity. I remain fascinated in terms of where that goes. And it continues to be a really robust platform of conversations and actions. Also been the chair of the Austin Parks Foundation. And that was, I'm going to say, even more challenging, even more exciting in terms of taking a fledgling organization, being involved with it for nearly 10 years and seeing the capacity to fund park improvements in Austin, where the Parks Department didn't have the resources or the financial capacity to do these improvements, to see Republic Square transformed, to see the tens and tens of millions of dollars that they've spent on public parks. To then be the vice chair of the Waterfront Planning Advisory Board and understanding the role of the city as it changes and its role to the river, lake, down lake, Ladybird Lake, and how to navigate the pressures of change and growth. And I think each one of those has been incredibly influential in terms of learning along the way, but also to something we say to the younger staff in the office all the time is that you're really not involved as a landscape architect or as a designer until you're actually giving back to the community. And sometimes that giving back isn't just donating to the food bank or to KLRU or all of these organizations, which of course you shouldn't. But also that sense of being a perceived expert in the community and your opinion being able to steer and influence decisions. Sometimes, sometimes mediating good decisions, sometimes not. That's the democratic way. But I think that's a really important role of practitioners, both young and seasoned, to actually be vocally present and have a strong opinion in terms of how we as experts can guide, mentor a community to make better informed decisions.
Yeah. And there's so many different facets because, between waterfront to the parks to the larger organization, there's different types of impact and different types of conversations that happen in those rooms.
And a lesson I learned would be very different expectations on your time or demand on time. And I think that's always a good lesson learned that we say is like, yes, be on that board and commission, but understand that, yes, you might be told it's a, 4 hours a week commitment or a once a month board meeting, but understand there is 6 subcommittees and a task meeting and a fundraising group and so choose your passion carefully and manage your time and don't overcommit. I mean, it's a volunteer, unpaid, but it's also those have been some of our most profound projects have come out of relationships that have been built through those volunteer opportunities. And so it does have substantial personal benefit as well as professional benefit.
Yeah, but not jumping in and doing 10 different organizations and trying to be a chair on all of them. The time doesn't add up. Yeah. And I always like wrapping up my podcast with this final question. And it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their career?
It's such an exciting time to be a designer. I know you said young professionals in a much more kind of polarized way, but
you can take it any way you'd like.
Yeah. I'm perpetually exhilarated by the role that urban design, urban planning, kind of landscape architecture is going. The kind of the cliched statement of being a steward of the environment, I think, is becoming more and more profound and more important as I guess, almost irrespective of politics and profound changes, at the governmental level, but the simple sense of understanding environment, understanding a better sense of equilibrium. And so I think, what advice comes out of that is be genuinely curious about what's around you. Do not enter into a practice and feel like you're going to be handed a script of this is where your career is going to go. You've got to probe and ask questions and be curious and persistent and tag along and travel, see the world, and don't just get stuck in your own little bubble. And I think push in a sense of who you are as an individual. We did the portfolio reviews for the University of Texas students a couple of weeks ago here in the office, and some of the portfolios were very formulaic. It's like, well, this is me, this is my project, and they get to the very last page, and you see these amazing photos of ceramics or sculptures or fine art drawings, and I'm like, and in every single instance, I said, my God, that should be your portfolio. Like, I love the fact that you can do all the Rhino and the Grasshopper and the CAD stuff. Great. But the fact that that last page, the thing that you maybe weren't even going to get to, is the most profound expression of who you are as a creative. Like, that advice is like, lean into who you are as a personality. This world is increasingly competitive, and the demands and rigors of who you are simply come down to an employer wants a spark. An employer wants to be taught as much as there is to teach, and wants somebody with a personality, with an attitude that can be a really careful listener, that can take guidance and work in a team, but also bring something I've never thought of before. Bring a skill set of, why shall we do this presentation in ceramics this time? And that quite literally happened when I was at LSU. We were thrust together with multidisciplinary studio, and the final presentation we gave was on 12 by 12 ceramic panels. It was the wackiest, goofiest, most fun, memorable project I've ever done. And those panels still sit, as far as I know, unless they got broken, in the architecture school. And it was just like, it was something very, very different. And so, there's so much formula, so much kind of form and practice to learn. And you can get there. The professional work environment is there to teach you how to put together a set of construction documents and how to understand the process of permitting and design and construction. But at the same time, I'll say this again through the lens of the dinosaur, like, there needs to be a new spark. There needs to be that kind of sense of have you thought of it this way? And I think that's what makes a design studio so robust, when people can bring exciting ideas to the table and be dynamic about it.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to you building your firm around the people, because it's the people that make the design, regardless of what they're good or bad at or what they have a passion for. It's when you bring together this mix of diverse perspectives and diverse ideas, that's really where the magic of design happens, is at those intersections. And so if there's something you're passionate about, don't put it at the very end of your portfolio. Bring it to the front and talk about it first, and let the back half of the portfolio be, oh yeah, I already know Rhino and I can do this and whatever, but let that front sing, because you really only get so much time to talk to somebody, to let them know who you are. So,
well, and that sense of talking to somebody is also another really important thing. Like, can you communicate succinctly and quickly? It's not about being a masterclass presenter, but can you, on the fly in a presentation, sketch an idea quickly? It's very hard to sketch an idea in AutoCAD. It's like, oh God, give me a day. I'm going to offset polylines. That sense of a quick evocative sketch, that quick kind of communication, and the sense of a client is trusting you to be a good mediator of communication. And I think that's another kind of really important advice of just, understand the importance of presentation. And it's not about going to acting school and getting a fake English accent. It's just about it works sometimes. But yeah, it's just, be yourself but be confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all fantastic advice. But I wanted to thank you, Daniel, for taking the time to speak with me today. And I will put links down below in the show notes to DWG. So if anybody wants to see the projects you guys have been working on or looking to partner with you, they can check you out there. Or is there any other way that is a good way to reach you guys?
We're proud and constantly on Instagram at Studio DWG. But there are links on the website in terms of making inquiries, dropping us a phone call, sending emails. Yeah. And if you're in town, want to stop by, please look us up or check out Waterloo Park, Springdale Green, other projects. And we're always excited to give people tours as well.
Yeah. And I will leave your Instagram handle down below too to make it a little bit easier for everybody. So if you're out in Austin, definitely check out some of their projects they've done. The beauty of the outdoor projects and public work, you can just go experience it. It's not an office project where you need a key card to get in and you never see it again.
There are a few that the security guards will come chasing you, but I'm not going to tell those ones. But
you figure it out.
Keelan, I just also wanted to thank you. This has been a really exhilarating conversation, and I really appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Daniel. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.